or afternoon. I really have no idea when this is going to come out. But we are back with DNA. It looked like I just like interrupted your like studies.
I just wrote a little bit. That was it. I was just getting ready to gear up and talk about dumb shit and all that jive. Not dumb shit about this, but dumb shit that's going on.
Yeah, it all
You know
is
what I
dumb
mean?
shit. We are back with another DNN. This will be one of those shows that when our schedules coincide and we can put one out, that is going to be the plan. So if you are looking for regularity in a show, this may not be for you. And also, if you're not into absolute batshit craziness, then also might not be for you. We are going to have fun. We are going to talk about all kinds of wild shit. So I kind of dipped out. I'm not gonna lie. It got to the point. Oh, and I wanted to address going to echo until I get Jay some equipment. We are going to echo a little bit because if not, he cannot hear shit. So unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with that, and I apologize. But basically, I had to dip out because it was all seeming like a gigantic play where none of it made any sense, and it was almost like they were trying to just continuously deflect and deflect. They were doing some cool shit, but the shit everyone was trying to get them to release and expose was not happening, which seems getting on Twitter the last couple of days here and there. It's been too damn nice to sit inside, so I have not dabbled a whole lot, but it looks like everything's like slowly trying to morph back to normal. I know there's still craziness going on, but Twitter seemed quite calm when I got on earlier.
Not my Twitter.
Oh, well, you dabble in the wild, wild west.
I am in the thick of it. And in the news cycles and everything else like that, everybody's just going nuts.
Okay,
Everybody's just going fucking nuts.
what's like the
It-
biggest thing going on currently? Like, what's number one on the old trending X?
well, number one, yes, well, it wasn't number one, it was number four, and it was Christ is King. Jordan Peterson put out a special, and then he also had a reverend that was on there that put out a little post and a video and everything talking about how Christians use Christ as King and how it's been hijacked as a right wing uh, racial term,
Okay.
basically.
Well, that's everything
So
in our world has been used as one or the other, it seems like.
yeah, so now everybody is saying Christ is King, including me, because I'm not racist. And then Candace Owens got called out by Jordan Peterson, and he put a big long list of stuff in there. I like Jordan Peterson. I mean, his 12 Rules of Life book is pretty good, but at the same time, uh, no, that ain't
So,
going to happen. You're not going
for
to get me to
people,
stop using Christ as King.
well, for
They're
people
saying it's been
who,
hijacked because people are using it for anti-Semitic purposes. That's the biggest thing that's going on right now on
okay,
Twitter on my end. Is everybody's all jacked up about anti-Semitism, and it all ties back to we haven't got the Epstein files yet, and a lot of people are tying that into Israel, and then more people have tied that into what you know how it goes, the
yeah,
Jews, and
well, but in all
but it's
fairness,
not that.
if they've not released it, we are coming up on 2 months now in office. It was supposed to be day one. And you can go even if you go over with when Cash Patel gets put in. He also said day one. And then
Yeah.
conveniently all this stuff and fuckery happens and we don't get the list. And I've said this on multiple shows, but they both got arrested. Diddy, the Epstein, you saw the Nickelodeon documentaries, what those creeps were doing. Like, this is clearly a pretty prevalent thing. They were trafficking the humans to someone, and they have a list of the clients, and we're not finding out who was purchasing the humans. And I feel like that is a very problematic thing because they did not stop purchasing the humans. That is why we're not getting the information because it's still under this control. But that alone should tell you, I feel like, how deep this goes. If they're not able to release that, I wonder why. I wonder who it might involve. Like
It,
maybe
it
all the
involves a
people.
it involves a lot of people that a lot of people know, but at the same time, I think what it is that, well, it's just like the Attorney General Pam Bondi said, the
Yeah.
Epstein files will be redacted somewhat to protect national security, which is bullshit. is what it is. If you've got a politician on there, I don't give a shit. This is where I stand in it. I don't care who the politician is. I don't give a damn whether
So
it's top, whether it's bottom. If they are trafficking children, and I'm sorry for any of the viewers and everything else like that. I'm gonna say something right now, like I said the other day. It is safe to say at this point, and anybody who is afraid to say it, I'll go ahead and say it, and you can quote me. These are my views alone, no views of the diner or anybody else like that. And the quote goes something like this: Our government is complicit in the systematic trafficking, rape, torture, and murder of children.
yep. It seems like I've talked about that on here multiple times of like all of these different rings, all of the different things I was reading. It's been going on forever. They arrested Epstein years ago. This isn't a new thing. This isn't Diddy was just another one that I assume pissed off the wrong person or said something
I think
incorrectly or whatever, and he was a fall guy, or he's not even in jail and he's on another island somewhere. Did you speak of that? Did you see the drone footage of what looked like Epstein on his island?
yeah, after everything had came out that he had died, somebody was flying a
Yeah.
drone over his island, and it looks like Epstein is outside of that side by side, and somebody's
What
on a four wheeler
I mean,
next to him.
go in your little castle thing and go underground and stay hidden. If you're gonna do this shit, like, what are you out there doing chores on the island? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That like everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, and this dude's out there doing yard work. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, this makes no sense. But the
It
more
makes no sense. It
well,
doesn't make sense.
it makes perfect sense the more they withhold it. The more they withhold it, it makes sense that it indicts a lot of people that they don't want. And the reason they say it's national security, either A, they're doing something to fix it and they don't want to talk about it because there is this long play and they're trying to fix it, which, if that's the case, then fantastic. But on the flip side of that, there is also a chance that it's the national security because it implicates most of the people that are in charge. And if nobody's in charge anymore, that makes us very weak to other countries. And if we have a complete uproar in America because most of the elite and everyone's involved in this giant human trafficking ring, there's going to be some problems.
Well, I can tell you this, and this is just a rumor. I haven't confirmed it or anything else like that. Of course, everybody's tying everything together back to places that, I think now, me, is somewhat of a diversion. You know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
can't lump you can't lump an entire group of people into the same
No.
category because everybody flying around on Twitter right now is saying it's the Jews, it's
Yeah.
this, it's that, and everything
They're
else.
doing
That's
that on
just like
purpose.
they're doing it on purpose. That's exactly what it is. They're throwing it out there and they're letting it happen. That way we can fight with each other,
Yes.
and we're not, and our eyes are off of that. And Pam Bondi's roots in the Epstein saga goes deeper than what everybody are thinking. Pam Bondi was the DA of Florida during Jeffrey Epstein's Florida trial.
How did she get
But
in there? Like, how did people not connect those dots and start tying that shit together long ago and just torch it before she
somebody
did?
did.
Oh, they just squashed it.
It's just he's a very, very, very censored, throttled account everywhere. He's not allowed on YouTube. He's not allowed. He has a Substack. He has a Rumble, and he has a Twitter account. That's it. I was lucky to find him when I watched a podcast about a JFK interview.
Interesting. So I have
And
been very like pro Twitter because I feel like it's where you can find the most free speech. That being said, they just had another one of the recent videos where it showed all of the different, I think it was senators giving the same fiery speech about being sick of the bullshit. And there's like a bunch
yeah,
of them reading off the same script. Okay. So recently it's been the same on Twitter where it seems as if it's getting flooded with a bunch of people saying the same narratives or they're doing the same things. Like recently, it's been them asking Grok question about Jews or Israel, and all of a sudden now all these people are doing the same thing. They're all posting it the exact same way, the same style, the same everything, and it's like, okay, but you all just happened to decide this at the same time that you were all going to do this and ask these questions and post it the exact same way in the same style. Like, and it's a lot of that you see everyone's doing the breaking news or developing or whatever the fuck you want to put on there. And then it's this outlandish theory, but I think they do that on purpose. They flood the news cycle with all this crazy shit. That way, the real shit slides through the cracks. The real shady shit that they get
Exactly.
away with. If you can flood it and distract everybody, and then on top of that, you keep everyone fighting about politics, race, religion, food, drinks, PlayStation. It doesn't matter. Pick your
It
thing.
doesn't matter.
It's all designed to
It
make you
doesn't.
not pay attention that they're just robbing everyone and that we live in like this modern day matrix that we all just voluntarily sign up for. And it's crazy. Like to find out that they've legitimately just been poisoning us with our food, and then they're gonna ban red dye, but they're gonna give us that's not because they already have procedures in place with different countries that won't allow this shit. They're selling this stuff in different countries and flavoring it and coloring it with beets and blueberries. They're not using the artificial dyes. They already know how to do it. It's all about product loss. They don't want to lose the money on the product, so they're going to let them poison us for 2 more years because, well, sorry guys, your health's not worth a profit loss. That should tell you everything you need to know about what they care about us. That doesn't it's so wild how quickly things go in and out of the cycle anymore, and how quickly it's just zoom, gone, gone. Like,
Yeah.
and
I'll
they
give you a prime
utilize
example. I'll give you a prime example. The attempted assassination of Trump
Yep,
last year. How quick was Matthew Crooks out of the news cycle? What, two,
yep,
3 days?
yep.
Maybe a
Because they
week? There you go. And at the same time, you also have a bunch of different connections in that cycle as well that came out that was never reinvestigated. Trump, what,
yep,
2, 3 weeks ago said, I want all the files on the attempted assassins, both of them, because there was two,
yep.
one in Pennsylvania and one in Florida. And nothing came out anymore about that. The biggest thing now in the news is anti-Semitism being on the rise, Israel not being allowed to be criticized, which, you know what, I'm to the point now to where I'll just say that in all of this cycle and me being in the news, I lost the plot a couple of times and went off into different corridors. And there's some deep, dark shit
Well,
that people are saying right now.
you also lose a sense of reality to an extent. I told you that
You
whenever we
do.
were researching, where I was like, hey, don't, this is why our Friday show went from what it was to wrestling, because it was like, hey, man, I'm starting to get to the point where like this is fucking depressing because you can't you can't change it, unfortunately. We can talk
No.
about it, we can do shit like this and bring it to people's attention. And what annoys me is the things like with our food, like that alone annoys the shit out of me because you know this stuff is harmful. You also know that they realize they could profit off of pharma. So you cause the disease, you cause the problem, you make money off of it. Look at all your TV ads. They're all pharmaceutical ads. They've they've learned how to use the media not only to their advantage as far as marketing potential, but they've also with like the MK Ultra stuff, they've for sure perfected it, and I think they utilize it in multiple different ways now where you flood that news cycle. Our brains like thrive off of that dopamine drip, and you're like looking for something going on, so your brain's just bam bam, and we all have that ADD mentality where it's just it's that flashing
Yeah.
screen next thing. So if you continuously flood the news cycle, you can get rid of anything. That's why the Epstein list has went and gone so many different times over the course of how many years has it been now? Like 6 years or something since he's been arrested.
Damn near
Like
6 years.
that, and
Well, that
that
was
doesn't.
that was the big arrest. The
Yeah,
trial down in Florida came and went way before that, and then he was back out on the loose again. And
yep,
people don't
and
realize that, but Epstein's an intriguing character because there's a lot of people that know a lot about of him, but there's a lot of stuff in the middle that people don't know about him
yeah,
and the different little organizations that he was linked up in.
because
The best
basically
thing,
they're all CIA operatives that were like utilizing this type of thing for blackmail in some way, shape, or form, whether it was through the child, the human trafficking, the whatever. They were trying to get something on everyone, whoever the quote unquote deep state is, essentially is utilizing this information to control the media, the market, all of the above is kind of the ongoing theory, correct?
well, it all depends on how you look at it because I mean, it is a good thing and a good source to lean on saying that the CIA is the deep state. It's
Okay.
a good way to say that, but you have to understand how deep the deep state's roots are in the United
Well,
States. Okay,
you'd
because
think
it's
if
not
they've
just.
hidden for this long, it's got to be pretty deep.
There you go. And you got to understand how much they perfected it and perfected it and perfected it. Like you said, James Lindsay has something on that because he went through and he started studying communism and he wants to know exactly who's at the top controlling things and everything else like that. And in the news portions that he talks about how they willfully will say something like a double speak or something like that.
Hmm.
And if you don't catch it, that is a way, and it sounds crazy the way he sets it up, but he's very articulate and he explains it in such a way to where you don't misunderstand it.
Well,
It's almost alchemic the way newscasters speak to you because they're using a double speak variation.
yeah. So I read a thing about abusers the other day that said that most of them will be like the nicest humans in person. That way, when the real news comes out, they can kind of gaslight everyone into thinking that person's crazy. And that's kind of what our government does to us. It's like we're in this abusive relationship, and they're just like, no, no one's ever going to believe you that we're all doing this. And there's a group of people like, hey, everybody, look, this is what's going on, and it's crazy how long they've been able to do it. But have you ever watched the TV show Scandal?
I don't think so.
It's
I
basically
don't watch
about
mainly, I don't watch a lot of stuff except for like learning stuff and news.
so back in my very, very fat days of lounging around watching TV, we watched Scandal. And essentially what it is this lady's a fixer. And her job is anytime something goes wrong, they fix it. Whether it's killing someone, blackmailing them, it doesn't matter. She's there to make it go away, and she works directly with the White House. They have a group of assassins. Like, it's a pretty cool show, but seems to be wildly accurate.
Well, it's going to be wildly accurate because of all the CIA documents that got released that you can actually go on the government website and look at where it talks about preferred methods of assassination.
Okay, question though. Are those because they know people are putting them out there? Do you think they're doing that on purpose too? Because I'm not convinced that they didn't realize they could utilize social media to their advantage and almost to an extent tell the conspiracy people you're right, but then flood it with so much crazy shit that it's overwhelming to where people who are on top of it can't even can't keep up with it. So think about people who aren't paying attention to it. How listening to this stuff, if we weren't just being silly and trying to break it down very like basic, how hard it is to follow that potentially most of our world is built on lies and corruption.
Well, I mean, I don't really want to say it for fear of sounding crazy, but at the same time, I mean, I I am to the point in all of my research and to the point in this latest deep dive. What have I been at it now? 3, 4 months?
Yeah, you went into some
Like
holes.
like 10, I'm gonna say 3, 4 months, no less than 30 hours a week for
You
three or
need to
four
utilize
months.
that and start writing comedy, by the way. I know that has
But
nothing to do with what we're talking about, but
But what I'm saying is I am under the impression, and I hate to say it, but a lot of people should really come to terms with, and they're not going to, that a lot of stuff from 1900 till now, and even before 1900, I'm going to put a number on it. I'm going to say is 55% fake.
yep. So when do you think the biggest I'm guessing around like the 60s, 70s era is where the biggest change in this. I'm sure there was always corruption because they realized very early on that if you didn't control the masses, there's way more of us than there are of them. If we want to change things, look at again, I use this example all the time. Look at what happened to Bud Light. That is one of the biggest beer franchises in history, and they were damn near shut down because they put the wrong person on the can and enough people got pissed off about it. And if you can utilize that same mindset for these things that are actually affecting humanity, like think about what we could do as a species if we just went, hey, fuck off. Like we're done doing this. Like what
Well,
is
we're
going
not to that point yet. You got to realize for the masses, for the people who are not informed, and I hate to cut you off,
No,
we're
you're good.
not to that point yet to where everybody can sit there and say, "Hey, we're not doing that." You
Fair.
remember in COVID, near the end of COVID, where everybody was like, "Okay, fuck this."
Well, hold on. We
That's
are though, because they did it with Bud Light. Like we
I'll
are
hold
there.
on.
You just
I
have
know
to
we're
have the right circumstance, I guess.
well, true, but at the same time, you have to understand that a lot of people were for it and a lot of people were against it. But Bud Light made a mistake because their demographic of people, who were they?
That's a
Mostly
fair point.
conservative men.
That's a fair point. So you would have to
And
go that on a worldwide basis, and it would have to be something that would piss off humanity in total, and that's a tough thing to get. But
that's right.
if they really did inject poison into most of humanity, I think that might just about do it.
So we were talking about the news and where do I think you said the 60s. I mean, it would all depend. It would really all depend. I think a lot of it kicked up in the surge of social media because a lot of people were, and including myself, of course, myself, a lot of people weren't getting their regular news or anything on the TV. And then when you get up to 2013, like probably in the height of social media where people were fully connected by then, what happened in 2013? It's either 2011 or 2013. I can't remember. Somewhere in between 2010 to 2013, Barack Obama repealed the Smith-Mundt Act. Okay,
Okay,
which the Smith-Mundt Act, when it originally enacted, it
is that's the
made it
propaganda?
illegal. Yeah, it made it illegal for the news to disseminate propaganda to its people. So who was in control of the news back then in order to give the news? It was the CIA and people like that. So you have to go back and you have to understand that even though the CIA gave news sources to other people and did all this, it could still be fake.
So, and
But
that's
when
what's wild is
2013 happened, and as soon as we got up to now, it's been okay, you can use propaganda to the masses. And people will sit in either Fox News or they'll sit on CNBC or they'll sit on CNN and everything else like that. And they will get lied to and repeat it.
Yep. But the
I'll
crazy
give you a
thing
prime
is it
example
worked
of
in that
now.
on Twitter. Twitter was that place that you could go that you didn't have to quite like you could get the information, the gist of what's going on. Now it's almost they've almost turned it into a tabloid at times where there's so much outlandish shit on there. Like you start going, okay, like this is fake, this is fake. And so it becomes almost more fake than it is. So you almost as human nature, you start to like push away from that and like, all right, well, that's probably not real. And like, I know I've read this shit a million times and still I'll catch myself like, oh fuck, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe this isn't real. Like maybe I'm just out of my goddamn mind and I'm reading into this stuff. But then it's
I've
like
had those moments.
it
I've had
but
those moments.
it can't all be fake. Like when you and you're
It
getting
can.
it from like real like it isn't like you're getting Joe Schmo from Idaho is your news source. Like these are all real politicians, like celebrities, people of power posting this shit on Twitter. And you're watching this going like, hey, that was like this really prominent figure that said that. Like that can't be bullshit, but like that's a wild thing for somebody to say. And then you research it and come to find out it's true. And it's like,
Yeah.
what
And
the
then you go
fuck?
back and you're like, that's not what the news said.
Yeah. Or like what history said. Or there's things that I've read that I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And I'll go put it into AI. And it's like, yes, this is why, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, that's not what we were taught. This is
Exactly.
like, and then you start like, but then your brain can go down all these different where like, oh, if this is fake and they really are poisoning us, and what if they are just breeding humans in this or breeding workers in the school system? Like, you kind of start connecting all these dots, and it's like, oh, they've kind of just like indoctrinated us into this matrix that all right, you just as soon as you get out of school you get in debt, then you get a job, and then you chase that dollar until you inevitably die. And it's like, well, that can't be what life is, but it's what we're all told it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to understand at the turn of the century when John Rockefeller was at his height, like when he was still the richest man on earth,
Mm-hmm.
he ran the school system.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
fascinating.
I can't remember what it was, the quote that's attributed to him. You'll have to look it up, but I do know what it is. He said something and then he said, I need a nation of workers. So
Mm-hmm.
what do? You don't teach people about investments. You don't teach people about money. You don't teach people about basic finance. Did you ever learn anything about investing, basic finance, compound
No,
interest, or anything else in school? Okay. And what has been your number one problem when you get into debt?
those things, because you don't
There you
they
go.
put you in debt right out of school, but you don't get taught about how to manage said debt. So like obviously some people do, but that's not a common thing. So if you can keep most people under the thumb for most of their life, you're going to have the outliers that break out of the mold or whatever, but if you can keep the masses under that thumb of debt, then obviously you own them for life.
It's the truth. I mean, and I'm not saying that in a psychotic way, but it is literally the truth. When you boil away all the bullshit and you get down to straight logic, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and like I don't know. I had that epiphany with like what I was doing, where like you kind of get that same thought where you're kind of going through and trying to mentally navigate, and I like the mental health thing has been a big portion of this, and I think that's part of it. You eat all of this food, you follow along with all of this negativity, and it kind of takes your brain down that. When you start breaking out of that and you start like getting back into that healthy mindset, you stop eating the bad foods, you start going to the gym, you start like paying attention to those things, the brain starts working better, you start thinking better, and then you start kind of, I don't know, refocusing your
Your
priorities, I
goals
guess.
and your priorities.
And obviously, if everyone starts doing that, they kind of lose their control. If everyone starts chasing their passions and doing these things, the Walmarts of the world don't develop like they do. All these big chains don't develop because all these communities stay like it was back in the olden days, where everyone had a thing because everyone was doing what they loved to do in life. So they were all making money trading their passions, and that was how the world worked. And then at some point, I'm assuming the Industrial Revolution came in, and that all changed, and it went from this like community thing to now everywhere is a Dollar General, a Walmart, a McDonald's. It's this,
We
don't
just
get
got a new
this.
Dollar General.
I saw that. But that's where like Brazil was kind of breaking that mold for a long time. So we have a lot of these mom and pop shops. We have a lot of these restaurants. Like we're kind of going back to that community thing where everyone's trading back and forth, whether it be by goods or services or money. You're trading something back and forth, and you're developing that community. Like not that people don't still shop at Kroger, Walmart, whatever, but you're eliminating those to an extent.
You're eliminating home gardens. You're eliminating the family time together and everything else like that. Here,
Yeah.
I'll give you a prime example. Uh, I watched an interview a while back. It was of Killer Mike. You know Killer Mike? He's a
Mhm.
rapper,
Yep.
activist, opens up for Dave Chappelle and everything. He was talking about he remembered a time back when he was a kid where all the people in his community had a garden in their backyard,
Yep.
and they were all healthy.
And now,
You can talk about, and that's the thing that I don't like about me growing up in my generation and coming to the realization of a lot of shit.
mhm,
Okay, you can talk about how bad it was back in the past. I'll give you that. I'll tell you that there was a lot of shit wrong in the past, a lot of shit that was done that shouldn't have been done, but a lot of people were healthy. A lot more
yep.
people were healthy.
Well, now you can't even go to the store and buy fruits and vegetables that aren't covered with pesticides and sprays and shit. Like you even have to pay attention to the things that you think are healthy. And then you realize there's this dirty dozen list. And if you don't know that, go look up the dirty dozen of fruits and vegetables. And it's all these things that are aggressively sprayed with pesticides and stuff to keep them from being eaten by bugs. And then obviously that soaks into them. So we're just eating this shit. And like learning about that was like, well, fuck, I can't even eat fruits and vegetables, and like the normal fruits and vegetables aren't even good for you, and it's super defeating because you're like, well, what the hell can I eat that's not just gonna kill me?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what's wrong, and it's the same thing for me because I've caught myself in that loop several times. A lot of people's problems would be solved if they got off their ass, got some sunlight, stopped putting sunscreen on. I'm sorry, I'll be one of those people. I'll be one
Yeah.
of those people and say that. The increase in sunscreen from the time it came out until now has increased so much. Not,
Well,
skin cancer. Skin
Johnson and
cancer has
Johnson
increased.
legitimately got sued for it.
There you go. But
They
people are
were
still putting sunscreen on their babies.
so if you have again another one, if you have not looked that up, it was Johnson and Johnson, and they had some chemical in their sunscreen that was causing the cancer that they had the patent and the medicine for. I believe is what the thing was, which is slightly a conflict of interest. But I think that's again that is most avenues in our world. I think most things operate like that. Most things operate, which there are things that kind of have to, whether it's the CIA, whatever, they kind of have to operate in secretive to an extent. Like to think that there can be full transparency of the CIA is crazy, but you just hope that they have the country's best interest at heart and humanity's best interest at heart. You hope that they're
Never
not,
happened.
but you hope that that's what's going on. Obviously, that's clearly not what's been going on. But they have to operate in secret, or some of this shit wouldn't work. You just have to have the right people that are there for the right reasons. Unfortunately, it seems like when you give anyone power, it immediately makes them a corrupt asshole who becomes money hungry and greedy.
Well, you got to see where they came from too. A lot of the people, and I noticed this about the new Trump administration. There is a lot of people in high up places in the Trump administration that were junior affiliates of the World Economic Forum. And a lot of people will post about how the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab are evil and everything else like that. But they won't tune in to the World Economic Forum summits that go on every year that show all of our politicians on there.
They do have what appears to be whatever that is, the animal that describes the Antichrist in front of their building. So it's slightly concerning.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know what's in front of the World Economic Forum. I do know that Klaus
I believe
Schwab
that's
is
what it
pretty
is.
high up on the villain list for humanity. He
Yeah.
always talks about it, the Great Reset, doing this, doing that. All of the stuff that I posted a video last night on my Facebook about the World Economic Forum's technology, one of their technology meetings, bullshits or
Yeah.
whatever, and everything else. And they were talking about brainwaves, about how you can monitor your own brainwaves in the
Hmm.
future or whatnot and everything through earbuds. And you call your doctor and you ask your doctor, can you check my brain activity from a couple of years
Yep.
or from a couple of months ago and everything? And then they cut the video off after all of that and they say, does that sound like a future you want? And people are like, and some of them are like, yeah. And then she said, well, the technology for that is already here.
Yep. Oh, it's going to get worse than that, though. It's going to be a chip where you see it in front of you, but no one else does. It'll be what the whatever those Ray-Ban Meta glasses are now, but it'll turn into a contact lens, then it'll turn into a chip, and then literally you won't be able to differentiate. It'll be like VR, and then they're essentially trying to combine us with technology, and I think that's how the fall of humanity. I think you not combine us, you utilize technology and AI to increase humanity and build humanity up and fix humanity rather than utilize it to become humanity. I think
There's
that's where
a,
we miss.
well, it all, I could spend 8 hours on that topic and everything. It all boils down to control. And that's
Yep.
what it is. Everybody talks about the great reset. Everybody talks about what's going on here and everything. They're not watching what's going on behind the scenes. Okay. I'll give you a prime example. You want to know why BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard haven't been broke up in the United States?
Because they're part of the deep state and they just run everything.
Well, because BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, not only do they own, well, proxy own 40 to 85% of the S&P 500, but Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock,
Hmm.
is a partner with Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum.
Oh. So see, they
And
are
that,
just slowly killing us on purpose.
well, I don't want to come right out and say anything like that, but when you go through all of their ESG scores, and when you go through all of their ESG scores and everything that they get, it's basically a big party. And at this big party, a bunch of leaders of countries are there and a bunch of corporations are there. And the World Economic Forum gives all of these corporations ESG scores to go along with the plan. And Klaus Schwab's plan is basically a great reset where we live in a stakeholder capitalism society that is controlled by technology to where we can live in like a communistic state. The dude is evil.
So,
And that's what
question.
it boils down to.
These people are the ones that own most of the companies that have the absolute bullshit food, correct?
Yes, BlackRock, Vanguard, and
Okay.
State Street own, well, Proxy own 90% of all the food that is disseminated to America.
So think about it. So
That's the
they,
processed foods.
yeah, so they are slowly killing us with that because it also works as population control because you're killing people quicker. Even if worst case scenario, it doesn't kill you, it gives you diabetes, it gives you cancer, it gives you this, it gives you that. So they're either killing you and wiping you off the board and aiding in their population control that they want, or they're keeping you sick to where you have to continuously pay for their medicine because these same people that own this processed food also own the medicine in most cases, correct?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of people say, well, they don't own anything. Okay, well, if they don't
They're
own
in
anything,
control of.
they're in control of it. And Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, which you might as well just call him and the other three CEOs the CEOs of America. Sorry,
Is that
that's
like the
just what it
three-headed
is.
dragon monster and Hercules? Those three?
I,
That's what it seems
man,
like.
it's a wild hole to go down. It really is, because when you dig deep, like James Lindsay has a whole course on all of this. He calls it Communism 1.0, Communism 2.0, and Communism 3.0. And when Communism 3.0, he gave his lecture, it was called Corporate Communism. And he talks about BlackRock, he talks about Larry Fink, he talks about Klaus Schwab, and how all of our leaders in the world and a lot of our politicians in the world are linked to Davos, to the World Economic Forum. It's
So they're
not a
kind
joke and it's not bullshit. It's the truth.
they're
And they
they're kind of
all
tapping into the commie
are
light.
following it. Well, a new model. And I'm new. And
A
I'm
new
new.
model.
I'm new because I feel like that is like the ultimate head of the snake right there. Because when you look at the control that all of the corporations have together who meet up there, and everything that they're talking about, they're not just talking about America. They're not just talking about Ethiopia. They're not just talking about China or anything else like that. They are talking about the world, and they are
Yep.
talking about the model that they want the world to run on. And Klaus Schwab says he wants the world to run on the model of communist China.
That's probably not great.
It's not. It really is, and it really is not. And it's pretty dark and ridiculous road to go down and a rabbit hole to go down. But when you see it finally laid bare for what it is, you're like, oh, that's why Larry Fink said we are forcing changes in the
Yeah.
market.
So just think about the food supply alone. Like think about how many people there are. Like we live in a pretty small town and there are two McDonald's within like a 5 to 10 minute basis of each other that are packed at all times. And that's like that across the country in all these small towns with all these people that are just serving burgers after burgers, getting shipments after shipments. Same thing with the grocery store. You don't see a whole lot of like outages. Like we're going through food like crazy and like uh, I mean I don't travel the world a lot, but I don't see it like we've been traveling a lot lately and I don't see a whole lot of cows. Like I don't know how this shit works, but like where's our food coming from? It seems like that's a lot of food to feed a lot of people and it doesn't quite make sense how it operates.
Exactly. But they're globalists, so they always find a way. Going back to
Well,
the chip thing that we had talked
oh
about,
yeah.
and I'll get back to the food in a second. In China, there is a video that you can watch of two scientists that made this study on mice and brain chips through nanochip technology. All right. And one of the doctors would tell the student who was there they had a rat or a mouse,
Hmm.
whatever, in a box, and they were under a red LED light. And he said, hit the switch. He hit the switch. The mouse took off running. He said, hit the switch again. The mouse stopped.
Oh, fascinating.
They
Well,
turned a fucking mouse into a computer.
think about the Neuralink. that dude's playing chess with his mind. He can like play video games and like have insane capabilities all with his mind, and that's the Atari of that. That's the brick phone. That's the whatever. Pick your invention. That's the first level of this. Like you're gonna be able to essentially what we're doing now. Just I can just sit here without this computer in front of me, and I can just see you like I'm wearing an Oculus, but it's a chip in my fucking brain, and I can just connect to you telepathically through this chip. Like we are. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but just like that
That's the
brain
type of
matter.
shit they're looking for.
Well, that like we talked about in the last episode of this, the brain matter simulation with AI and the butterfly, where they basically made this petri dish of brain matter think it's a real butterfly. In it flies around, it feels the butterfly, and it's obviously just brain matter in a dish, but it doesn't even know that's what it is. And it's like if they can do that shit, like we're in for a wild decade over like these next 10 years are going to be insane because like we talked about last time, not only is it so far advanced, but it's teaching itself at an alarming rate every day. And then you pump in those supercomputers and it's going to just take off. And if you don't harness this shit and do it the right way, it becomes incredibly detrimental rather than being the invention that like rises humanity and makes us this awesome species that has harnessed technology and utilized it for good and to develop ourselves. Instead, it's going to be greedy fuckfaces that take it and utilize it for their own corporate greed and then eventually ruining the human race.
Well, I mean,
Like the movie Terminator.
you can only hope that it doesn't happen. But right now, with all the deregulation that you have with AI and technology and everything else like that, the right now what they're saying is speed is their ally. They need to
Yeah,
develop it.
it's a
China
fucking
just
arms
put
race.
out. It really is. It really is an arms race. AI and technology is the new power. If you hold the most powerful AI that's
Yeah,
able to compute, what can you do for your society?
it's like Pinky and the Brain. They're all trying to take over the world.
I mean, I don't like to say it like that. I would hope that a lot of people are not as nefarious as I have read about.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you get that high up, it can only surmise to say that
And
it's
knowing
kind
that
of
there's
shitty.
Well, knowing there's a list of legitimate pedophiles out there that are clearly part of an elite group, whoever they are, it literally does not matter. But the fact that that's there and no one on either side, no, like very few people seem to be speaking out about it. If they do speak out about it, weirdly enough, they end up having a minor accident in a hot tub or something crazy, and they end up not living anymore. It's wild how that always happens. But like,
Well,
if
Gene
that
Hackman,
alone, yeah, he was like the number one witness for this, and then they wound up dead. Like how many
him, his
people?
wife, and his dog were shot.
And it's like how do you not connect the dots at this point? And that's the problem that I have. They can do as many cool things as they want, but until they release the list of motherfucking pedophiles and they start fixing this shit, I don't trust any of them. I
Exactly.
don't and I don't understand how they don't see that. You don't get to talk all this shit about day one. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm gonna do blah 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 blah. Like it's not that age anymore, motherfuckers. It's time to either be transparent or not. You get the fuck out of there then. We don't need the ancient old people all running the country anymore. I think the time has passed as a country that this archaic way of thinking that this one dinosaur man, the last motherfucker, couldn't even make it through without like wandering off into the woods. And like that's who we're electing as president. Like why is it 80-year-olds? What every time it's 80-year-olds? Like why on either side? It's never made sense to me that there's not a spry 50-year-old that has a lot of fucking good ideas and life experience. Like really, that it's always 80-year-olds. Weird. I wonder why. Like it's we live in this like tunnel vision thing that makes no sense to me.
Well, you gotta remember that the propagandic media has put the blinders on. How many people sat there a couple of years ago and watched Joe Biden on the news at the White House, but at the same time the news was playing somewhere else and Joe Biden was out of the country?
Yeah.
That's where you can Google 6 foot Biden. Google 6 foot Biden, and it will show you Biden's body double. That's what it was. It's a fucking body double.
Well, and he came walking out of the White House, and he was a head taller than everyone else. Like, it was bluntly obvious where it was like, I think Rogan even played that on his show, where he's like, well,
He
who is
did.
that motherfucker? Like, come on. But
He
again,
did.
no one's asking questions. Like, as a society, we will have enough people that will tear down Bud Light, but not enough people will come together on this and go, hey,
Hey,
what the fuck? Like, this
there
makes
you go.
no sense. World War
Like
II.
how?
We voluntarily, I believe, and I'm not a history person, so if I'm missing any of this, please correct me, but we voluntarily started paying taxes to fund the war via patriotism. Once that was over, essentially they realized, hey, they're just going to keep paying us this money, and we can essentially utilize it for whatever the fuck we want and call it whatever. And then here we are now, is essentially what has happened, correct?
I got a lot of dirty shit on World War II. Look up the wind codes. Wind, WIND codes in World War II. They were in different files. They were in CIA files, and they were also in MI6 files or
Okay.
MI5, whatever they're called. I say MI6 because of James Bond. But anyway, a couple of months before Pearl Harbor, there were different people other than Winston Churchill and also members of the CIA that knew Japan was planning an attack. The only thing that they were waiting on was what they called the wind codes. They would have a daily weather report, Japan would, over radio. All right. And we had our code breakers, and Winston Churchill had his code breakers. I can't remember what in the hell it was called, but he had intercepted a message, and I can't remember the video that this was tagged to. I just seen it probably 2 days ago. They had intercepted a message that picked up the wind code and where Japan was going to attack. And they knew that they were going to hit Pearl Harbor. What did Winston Churchill do? He told everybody to destroy their radios.
Oh.
Why is that? Because Churchill wanted FDR to enter World War II to help them.
Interesting.
FDR was sending shit to Winston Churchill in order to be able to fight, which it doesn't really matter because the USA, and a lot of people are going to be pissed off when I say this, and I really don't care because it's all available information that you can read. The USA not only was supplying us for the war, but Henry Ford had a tank manufacturing plant in Germany.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And when it was bombed by the Allied forces, instead of it coming back and saying, oh shit, and claiming it, Henry Ford offered to pay Hitler himself so that he didn't have to claim anything and go through red tape to build those tanks that were used against our ancestors. And you also had different people who were manufacturing Zyklon B gas and selling it to the Nazis. Zyklon B gas was famously the cyanide gas that was used in the Holocaust.
Oh.
But people don't want to read. People don't want to read and put all this together. Back to the wind codes. When you go through the CIA files and you go through the MI5 files, I think there's under the British National Archives. I can't remember where it was, where I had found it, where it had linked to me. I was told this, so I went ahead and I checked it out myself. There is probably 40 or 50 pages from each file, from MI5, MI6, whatever, and the CIA that are missing. And after it picks back up, after Japan had attacked, they knew it.
Interesting.
And then you have the historian that wrote the book. I'll pass the book information on to you. He does a good breakdown of it and everything else. But all throughout the war, when you start reading different accounts of history, Churchill wanted FDR in World War II so bad. So bad. He was calling for help, but I mean, they were getting blitzkrieged and everything else like that. So what do? If you knew that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor, what would you do? You would beef up security. But what happens if you don't know about it? You get attacked, you get a rise of patriotism, and then you enter the war.
That's but I think that's how a lot of things in this stuff works, where there's Do I think some of it is for the right reasons and they need to do things in certain cases for certain whatever? I'm sure there are those circumstances, but at the end of the day, there's also a lot of those that seem to be done via the green paper stuff more than it is via humanity and
Smed
what's right and what needs to be done.
Smedley Butler famously said in his book, "All wars are bankers' wars."
Mm-hmm.
Smedley Butler is probably one of the most prolific generals in World War II history because he had found out that they were going to coup the government and overthrow it militarily and have us be Nazis. And he had found that out in a hotel meeting where a bunch of bureaucrats and bankers and everybody else were meeting up and everything. And then he went and told, he blew the story wide open. Nobody got in trouble.
Sounds like the Epstein list.
There you go. Back to the Epstein list. You can only surmise to your imagination's will who's on that list.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like the internet community has done a pretty good job of narrowing it down. And it's always funny too because they get close and you can tell the ones that it really bugs because they start lashing out or they move or whatever. And it's like, oh, they got you. Like there's a lot of them that are very smart too that just have understood that if they just shut the fuck up and don't say anything and don't react to it, that it just kind of falls off the table eventually. And the ones that kind of bite back and fight, they're kind of pegged as those, literally and figuratively probably, but they're pegged as those like, oh, they're for sure on this list kind of thing. And it's like, oh, you just kind of ratted yourself out to an extent.
Exactly. There was a lot of people that were before I started getting deeper and deeper into the whole of everything. There was a lot of people coming out on Twitter after they had talked about the release of the MLK files, the release of the JFK
Yeah.
files, RFK, and the Epstein list, who went on Twitter and locked their account first and then
Mm-hmm.
deleted everything they ever posted.
Yep, and there was a lot of that, and it's like, oh, you just might as well said you were fucking guilty, and that's what I
Exactly.
wish that so many of those things happened in that stroke. Where like I think it was like Chrissy Teigen and John Legend both, where Chrissy Teigen had tweeted out like horrendous things, like innuendos about children and like going to jail to do things to children, and then went and deleted them all. Well, people were resurfacing those, going, look at all this wild shit they've said, and they're prominently on that list. Tom Hanks keeps going back and forth. Ellen literally fled the country and went somewhere else after all this shit happened. And it's like, there has to be some validity to this because not only are they all kind of showing their hand, but this list won't come out. They arrested the kingpins, quote unquote, or fall guys, whatever you would like
That's
to call them.
dumb.
And
That's so dumb.
but that's what they're trying to portray. But in reality, they were trafficking and doing this shit with, they had all these tapes, they have all these people, they have all this evidence. It's horrific, it's this, it's that, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. No one talks about it anymore. No one's getting arrested. No one's doing anything. And it's like, well, hold on. No. That's not how this works. If I commit a crime and you find out I commit a crime, I'm going to jail. You find
There you
out
go.
you commit a crime, and just because of who it is and how many of them there are, we're just going to keep letting them traffic women and children and do horrific things. Like, how is that okay? And how, as a society, are we okay knowing that
There
these
you
people
go.
are arrested for human trafficking, but we're not going after the people who were fucking the children? Like, what kind of backwards ass philosophy is that? They're just going
Yeah.
to find a
Why
new
are we?
person children. They're not going to stop doing it. They're just going to get a new person to bring them the children. It's never going to stop. You have to get these people out of this world and get this stopped. But if it's a worldwide ring that implements all of the elite, whether it be politics, athletes, actors, musicians, pick your genre, it doesn't matter. If it
It
implicates
doesn't matter.
and it's a worldwide thing, good fucking luck getting into that one.
Well, and then they say that Diddy ties into it, and there was an interesting case that was made in the Diddy case and everything, that if Diddy would have kept his mouth shut about one certain thing, he probably would have just been left alone.
That's why I assume he did something wrong. He fucked
I'll
up
tell
and
you exactly what he did
they
wrong.
punished him for it.
He sued the company that owns Ciroc, and he won.
Oh.
What happened after he sued Ciroc? sued for Ciroc. What
Guy,
happened?
he got arrested.
Ah, damn.
Whoops, you fucked with the wrong people.
Like, for real. Um, what else was I going to say about it? And, there's a lot of people who are not off the hook. There's a lot of people who are saying, it's, and I'll agree, a lot of people need to quit saying it's the Jews, and a lot of people need to quit
It's
saying
not,
it's Israel as a whole. But at the same time, if you say that, automatically it's thrown out because it's anti-Semitic and because there's laws around it. But let me ask a question. If it's not some of it, and I'm not saying that as a whole, and I'm not saying the country as a whole or the nation state as a whole, why is Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, photographed multiple times with Jeffrey Epstein? And why is Ghislaine Maxwell, who is also the head with Epstein's father, the former leader of the Mossad?
I mean, it makes sense, honestly, because like they did the whole Ukraine thing where he was yelling at Zelensky in his office, and then during that whole thing you find out that they just give Israel $3 billion, and it was like, wait, hold on, we're yelling at
No,
the one dude.
since Trump's got in office, they've pledged 16 billion to Israel.
So, and then like you see all the ties and everything, and then the list doesn't come out, and you see that like that was the running theory that Israel was utilizing Epstein, Diddy, whatever to kind of keep these things all under
I think
wraps.
it was more of them.
But
I think there was more of them.
I don't
I
think
think
it's
it.
just Israel though. I think it's
Nope.
Israel, it's BlackRock, it's Vanguard, State Street. I think there's a whole big
It's the UK.
conglomerate
It's MI5.
cabal.
It's
Yeah, there's a whole big like cabal that is running the world, I guess, to an extent, or that
and
is
if
like.
you say that, people think you're crazy.
But if not, then the Epstein list would have come out.
There
If
you
not,
go.
before the election, there wouldn't have been motherfucking UFOs everywhere. And as soon as the election's over, now all of a sudden they're gone and everybody's crazy. It's like and it just consistently keeps feeding the same cycles over and over. So you kind of pick out the patterns, and you start seeing these things, and you're like, oh, this is just the way. And that's how people are catching them on these speeches and different things where they're cutting it all and showing you, hey, look, here's 50 people saying the same shit. Tell me this isn't orchestrated. Like they're
There you go.
verbatim using the same videos and saying the same shit, but you want to tell me that media is real and it's not all scripted and orchestrated? Like it's a movie. They're all saying the same shit
It's a
with
fucking movie.
like the same vocal inflections, the same like back videos, the same tunes. Like all of them did the same crazy shit. And how do you not look at that stuff and go, wait a second? I think, but it's like it's the whole world has went to WWE, where
There you
like
go.
we know that they know that we know, and now they're utilizing it against us, and like they're playing. Like I'm convinced WWE's doing that right now, where they know the Twitter world is on to what's going on, so they're flooding out fake bullshit to get people to think they know what's going on, and then swerving everybody and keeping you confused at all times. And I'm fairly certain our government's going through the same model. Like they're like, all right, we got WWE style, and we are going to write the story, and this is how it's all going to play out to where we get the correct narrative.
And everybody's sitting there going, "Oh God, what's going to happen next?" While about 20% of the people are saying, "Hey, our government's fucking kids." Oh, that was Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Was it?
Yeah.
Just
they were
them?
the ones. They were the ones orchestrating and getting the kids. They were not the ones that were doing the acts. Like it's horrific stuff to look at. Like when I was into that world on Twitter, and you're seeing all this shit. Like it's depressing, terrifying, and it pisses you off. So
It
reading
really
all
is.
well, then you watch it all continue to stay behind the scenes, and no one's doing fuck all of anything about it. And it seems to continue to get squashed year after year after year. At some point, again, like to know what these people are doing, to see that like there is enough evidence at this point that I've looked at and watched where I'm connecting the dots. Obviously, you've done the same. Most of the Twitter world is doing the same on a daily basis. Yet no one's going to prison. No one's being tried for this shit. The Diddy thing keeps getting delayed. The Jay-Z accuser came out and then all of a sudden dropped the charges, weirdly enough. And it's
Oh,
like hold on, like what? And then it goes away magically again, and now everyone's back talking about the next drama in sports, or the next drama in this world, or the TV world, and it's like, how does this keep getting brushed under the rug and no one's doing anything when, like, as a parent, like, that's all I think about. Like, what? Like, that's a real thing. Like, California tried to change it to minor attracted people. Like, they were
That's
trying to change
disgusting.
it from a fucking pedophile to being minor attracted, to, like,
That's
sympathize with them.
disgusting.
Like, again, if that's the laws you're
No,
trying to make, like, what?
I would rather a pedophile be sympathized with at the end of a barrel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sorry.
but I
If
don't
you
see.
if you hurt children, or you kill the innocent, or you implement a genocide, or you do anything of that sort, if you do something that heinous, I won't even give it a label. If you do something so heinous that you know you can get away with, and that you know nobody's going to care about because they've been indoctrinated for so long, then you need to die.
It's a wild world that we live in, that many people can even, like the stuff that I've read and seen and whatever on there, like the fact that there's people that their brains work that way, and that's something that, like, you're going after in life is just beyond fucked up to me. But the fact that it seems as if a lot of the elite people have went a very, very wild approach. Now, I would assume that it's not everybody. I'm guessing it was legit big parties. There were just certain rooms with certain things going on that people were getting involved in. So just because they went to a Diddy party doesn't necessarily mean that they were, doing those acts. They could have also went and not been in the room, but you know that they know what's going on in those other
Yeah,
rooms to an extent. So you're also not
guilty by
safe
association.
and letting it happen. So it's like, how many of these people? And truthfully, it doesn't matter. They all need to get everything that they deserve. And I hope that the wonderful karma fairy flies in and smacks them all in the fucking mouth.
I do too. And then these same people who were a part of either the Epstein racket or the Diddy racket, whatever it was, I think it's linked to be the same racket.
I
The
would assume.
same people in high places and the same
It,
people in the celebrity world and
yep,
everything else are telling us about humanity and care and love, and we're in this together. No,
yep.
you
And
don't have a right to tell me about my humanity if you're doing that shit behind closed doors. I mean, and I'm not saying anything that can be cause for anything else like that, but I'll give you a prime example. The emails that came out talking about $60,000 worth of hot dogs and pizza being
yep,
delivered to the White House. That was
flown
under
in.
Obama.
Yep, flown in from Chicago.
Flown in from Chicago. Okay, we already know from the Pizzagate files and everything that came out about that pizza and hot dogs are boy
Code
and
name.
girl, are
Yep.
code names for a boy and a girl. Then you have the Wayfair scandal where people were paying 35 to 100, $400,000 for furniture that had children's names.
Yep. And they, like, people were proving that. People were like going on there and showing all this shit. And but it's real. Like, you had
It's
Dr.
real.
Dr. Phil was on, like, a tour trying to stop human trafficking because of how many children were being trafficked. Like, it's insane. And then it's like they've even turned to where, like, people are, they turned against Dr. Phil and made it to where he was a crazy person. And it's
There you
like,
go.
everyone who speaks out against this is crazy. But then the more and more it comes out, the more the dots connect, and it's like, this shit makes way more sense to me than most of the stuff I was taught my whole life. Like, what is going on? And you start diving into it and looking, and obviously you've done way more research than I have, but you start connecting these dots, and it's like, whoa, I think everything might be a lie.
I came to the realization that I told you earlier that I think a lot of the percentage from the turn of the century until now is mostly fake.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep, because
mostly
they
fake.
need to create a narrative because again, it keeps everyone indoctrinated in this matrix and keeps you working for them, paying their taxes. So then they're then taking that tax money and shipping it off to fund whatever it is that they continuously keep funding, and whether it's this human, but then they're making so much money off of it. That's what's going on. That we are like this middleman in this gigantic worldwide human trafficking ring. Like obviously they're making billions of dollars in that industry as well. So it's the money is just funneling in from every which way, and
It's
that's
coming
where
from
it's all,
us.
yeah,
What
we're
pisses
paid.
me off, what pisses me off the most about it is I'm paying for this.
Yeah,
How am I supposed to look at myself morally if
we're
somebody's
paying.
telling me it's against the law to not pay your taxes? It's also against the law to traffic children.
But just think about it. You could have funded a $50 million, $20 million Iraqi Sesame Street. I don't remember which one it was, but you could have funded that joy to those children. You also could have funded 50,000, I think was it, no, maybe 50 million worth of condoms in Gaza. So again,
Well,
you're bringing joy and love across the world, Jay. That's what they're doing with that money.
people will sit there and say that that's funny as shit. They say the biggest one when the condoms in Gaza came out was, well, when Israel occupied Gaza and everything else, and they were going here and there and doing this, and the big narrative and everything was there was a breeding problem in Palestinians, and they were saying it's the only genocide where the population of the Palestinians rose, and they sent them condoms because they wanted them to not have kids. Well, what they
While they're
failed to
bombing the
mention,
fuck out of them.
there you go. Hold on. They sent them over there, and I can't. That's just a paraphrase of what happened.
Yeah.
They wanted to link it towards disease and also population, but they're going to bypass the fact that 2 months before that came out, I had photos and documents of the Hamas terrorists utilizing those same condoms as bombs on drones.
Weird how that worked.
They were called condom bombs. Look it up. You can look it up. Hamas condom bombs.
I like
And
how
they were
Hamas,
using those condoms to float over and explode.
I can't get over that Hamas dresses like the Foot Clan from the Ninja Turtles.
I can't get over the fact that we allowed Hamas to grow. I
Yeah.
can't get over the fact that in the 1980s we funded the Houthis to fight the Russians and then just let them go. And it's all a part of the same Muslim Brotherhood tack. The same people that we fought in the Iraq and Afghanistan war were the same people that we funded and continue to fund to this day to the tune of $40 to $80 million a week in dark money that we
I wish
send over there.
they could start funding me. We'd just take like a couple million. They could save a hell of a lot. I don't know what we do for them, but I mean, they could fund us.
We allowed it. What was it? It was one of the only times that Hillary Clinton made sense to me and that I could watch it. She was sitting there giving testimony, and she said, "I want to remind you guys, these are the same people that we put into power.
Yeah.
Our government put these people in power. Our government allowed the release of prisoners. Well, our government with the Israeli government allowed the release of prisoners from Israel back into Gaza and the West Bank, and they were some of the most heinous fucking criminals and some of the most heinous terrorists that we knew about. Why was that? They did that so that they could sow discourse throughout the LPO and to fight Yasser Arafat.
Who is that?
Yasser Arafat. I don't know much about Yasser Arafat. All I know on that end of it is it was basically due to the Muslim Brotherhood and all that other shit. But Yasser Arafat was also an ally with Nelson Mandela and the ANC in Africa, and he was also an ally with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya.
Oh.
And that's a different tie to it. Those three people all three of them rose to power and got taken out of power because of us.
Huh.
Because of us.
Fascinating.
It is. Well, here's one. You can watch the interview with Nelson Mandela in New York City. I can't remember what year it is, but I watched the whole entire interview. of it. And he exclaimed too. He said he's not against anything about Jews. He's not against anything about Israel because Nelson Mandela was a lawyer who was trained by a Jewish firm. They taught him and everything else like that. There's so many different contradictions that people are not looking at, and they want to attack everybody as a whole, or they want to say, well, you're a terrorist supporter. Well, you're this supporter. Well, you're that supporter and everything else. But they will completely miss the regime change and constant fuckery that the CIA, who went rogue, and they probably still are rogue to this day, to fund the toppling of our enemies covertly. And they weren't even our enemies.
And it's all
they were just doing shit we didn't like.
Well, I think it's all still the same thing. Like they're just going to keep everyone at odds over everything at all times. It doesn't matter what it is. They're just going to keep everyone fighting over something so they can just keep doing whatever the fuck they want.
Whatever the fuck they want.
If no one's paying attention, they can just keep getting away with everything, which is what's happened for decades. The problem is they ran into Twitter and TikTok, and people started being able to just record themselves and putting it out there, and then millions of people seeing it arbitrarily and kind of blowing the lid on some of these things that have gone on. And some of these people are really good at what they do. They put a lot of work into it. They put a lot of research. They're putting up the clips behind them and showing you what's going on. And it's like, ooh, you start watching into this stuff and it's like, wow, there's a lot of craziness going on in our world. And
a lot of people disagree with me because of what they seen on the news and what the official report was. This is just it's not my sole belief, but it's just the logical conclusion that I can make. And the logical conclusion that I can make is Muammar Gaddafi was not a bad man.
Well, and I think
I'm gonna say it again. Muammar Gaddafi was not a bad man. You look at the pictures of Libya under Muammar Gaddafi's rule, and then you Google a picture of Libya today. Okay? There you go. You want to know what it was about? Hillary Clinton got tipped off that Muammar Gaddafi was holding so many tons of gold, and he wanted all shipments of oil to be handled in the dinar. Instead of the US dollar. He wanted a national currency for the country of Africa, and he was going to pave way through that. Muammar Gaddafi had free schooling. Muammar Gaddafi also paid for his citizens to travel. He paid for his citizens to have children. They had free water. Gas under Muammar Gaddafi was cents. It was cents, not dollars and cents. It was cents. And if you read the Green Book that he wrote and everything else like that, and you start doing the study of Muammar Gaddafi, people call him a terrorist. People call him a dictator or anything else. It just takes a little courage sometimes to be that good of a leader. And when they're doing something that you don't like, not using the US dollar, holding on to a bunch of gold, showing everybody what can be done in the world, and it combats what you think, then what happens? You fund the regime, aka the militants or the rebel groups, to this terrorist who gassed his troops. I'm not going to say who actually let the gas off in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi's citizens, but I can tell you this: it wasn't Muammar Gaddafi.
Interesting.
And what happened? Muammar Gaddafi was marched down the street. You can watch the video. Muammar Gaddafi was marched down the street, and on camera they shoved a sword up his ass. Tell me that wasn't a message to somebody else saying, "Oh, okay, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you."
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
But going back to what you were talking about, I know you had a question. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
No, you're fine.
It's just the logical deductions. And people, the biggest thing to me is when I tell people this and they tell me that I'm crazy, then I ask them, have you read about it? And they say, no, but I seen it on the news. And then I'm like, eh.
Well, and that's where, like, I kind of want, obviously, we've done a little bit over an hour, so
sorry.
No, you're fine. This is what I wanted this to be, just us kind of rambling. But all the things that we said is a lot of stuff that we just read on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Feel free to do your own research. None of this is like it's our opinion and things that we've read and saw, and it seems as
Yeah.
if we live in a wild world. And we thought, what better way than for us to just do a random. I don't even know if the news network is the way to call it. It's us reading stuff and then bantering about it on here. And to end the show, I figure these two clips will absolutely let people know what they're in for in this show. So here you go.
Look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
This is crazy. I don't know shit about fuck.
And that should tell you all you need to know about this show. That's what you're going to get. And we are going to incoherently ramble about all of the wild shit we read on Twitter. Some of it might be real, some of it might not be. So please do your own research and read things, because there's a lot of wild shit out there. And I think
Have
that's
fun.
a perfect way to go out on this. So we'll make some money and we will get out of here. Thank you to Pappy's Barbecue. Meat, eat, repeat. RJ's Formal Wear. They have sweet suits. Wabash Valley Plumbing. They lay pipe. Hear myself in stereo. Peak Performance Gym. No peak, no results.
Yeah.
And Stitch Brands. They embroider stuff. Well, thank you, sir, for joining me again. We will try to make these a little more consistent, but they will be very, very sporadic, as we both have very different schedules. So we will try to do these as often as we can and continue to inform you about all the wild bullshit in the world. So thank you, Jay. We will see you
Bobby.
next time. Goodbye.